Hello, and welcome to the Mothers of All Crime. This is a podcast where we deep dive into mothers involved in infamous crimes and scandals. I'm Monica, and this is Crystal.
Welcome back to the Mothers of All Crime. This week we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite scandals, Octomom. How are we doing today, Crystal? Excited about Octomom?
I'm good. Yeah, Octomom's one of those ones that I'm gonna be so honest. I don't think I knew her name for the majority of it. It was just
For
Octomom.
sure.
I think Nadya was. I probably knew it in the time when it was super topical in the news and things like that. But after that, it fell right out of my brain. So I'm excited. What about you?
I was obsessed with this at the time, and I watched her new series on Lifetime, and I've always been kind of checking in on Nadia. And I'm excited to talk about it because I feel like it's not something I get to talk about.
Yes. Yeah, I think she obviously is what she's known for is her having 8 babies at the same time. But I think a lot of people forget she actually had 14 kids total and living in
Yes.
California, which feels like a wild thing to do in the modern age, having that many children.
100%. Let's set the scene of just how um, eccentric the situation was. So, Nadia, who used to be Natalie Denise and had rebranded herself several times, her name is Nadya Suleman when she comes to public attention. She had 6 children conceived through fertility treatments as a single mother. And for almost all of that time, she is unemployed and is using what she says is anonymous donor sperm to create children through IVF. So she has 6 children and decides that she needs one more and gets her doctor, Dr. Michael Camrara, to put what he says is 6 embryos, but he actually puts in 12 at one time, and 8 of them take. And she has octuplets, who are the first surviving octuplets in America. Wild.
Yeah,
14 children.
yeah. And I think a lot of the heat that she got wasn't necessarily the fact that she had 14 kids. I think a lot of it came from the fact she was unemployed and she was
Hmm.
doing it out of pure desire of quote wanting to be a mom, a single mom more than anything,
Yeah.
and not being able to financially support, and also at 14 kids even emotionally support all of these children, I think is really where her scrutiny started, because the ones we've talked about in the past and I think people are familiar with who have a lot of kids tend to come from some kind of religious background. And don't get me wrong, there are exceptions to that. But we talk about like the Duggar family or the Kingstons or FLDS. And these people are very, very large families, 10, 14 kids. But it's also a cultural thing. Everyone they know comes from families like this. And they're able to have that kind of support that they know what to expect. And I think when you have a modern woman trying to do this as well, like she was by herself. She didn't have the support that a lot of these other communities have.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was very out of the norm what she was doing, and her family wasn't really in favor of it either at the time. They thought it was pretty excessive to have this many children. And I think for two um, gainfully employed people, this amount of children would be impossible still. I know that people do it, but it boggles belief that you could really successfully financially, emotionally, physically, logistically parent, house all of these children And to do it by yourself without a steady stream of income also seems just even more difficult. And when she had the first surviving set of octuplets, and even during the pregnancy, it was so sensational that she became on, a huge household name basically, and was on different talk shows and did lots of different appearances and was in tabloids and newspapers, magazines, and made money doing that, which helped, but it's still a enormous amount of kids to support.
Oh, 100%. And she was living in California to top that all off, which is also one of the most expensive places
Mm-hmm.
to raise kids. And what we learned a
Totally.
lot of her publicity, because like you said, she jumped in, and
Mm-hmm.
depending on different podcasts and reviewers and new media outlets you listen to, her motivation tends to change. So you have everyone from being, she just was a mom, didn't want the publicity, didn't want to have her kids exploited, but like because it's so strange, it kind of got thrust upon her. And then you have other extreme end that people are saying that she kind of took advantage of the situation and used it to her benefit to quote become famous. And it's an interesting how far that is, because she did become a media sensation and she presented this idea that she is now going to get into fitness and faith and she's going to raise her family vegan and all these other decisions, which is great. But again, how are you going to prioritize your fitness journey after having 14 children and over the welfare of your children? Like, how are you going to afford to feed all these children vegan, which is an expensive lifestyle? I understand there's a lot of health benefits, but when you're on disability or getting money just from like the talk shows or occasional counseling sessions that you get hired to do, that's still not enough to raise 14 kids. Yet you're going to pay for a gym membership. You're going to um, feed your kids a vegan lifestyle versus just a healthy diet and a balance. So she really kind of, depending on what you read, had such drastic opinions, kind of either of herself or thrusted onto her.
Yeah, I think that people assumed a lot about how she was essentially a, abusing welfare, abusing the system, and was at the same time trying to live like a luxurious type lifestyle with a million kids, and it just was it, it didn't sit well with people, and she faced a ton of scrutiny for pretty much everything that she did. And she's always said that she didn't want fame and it was just thrust upon her. And it is true that she would have had to kind of actively avoid the fame if she really did not want to be a part of that. But I think that she kind of needed to take whatever she could get at that point.
Yeah.
Like, she put herself in a position where she basically couldn't say no, which led to her, making even more bad decisions, like not reporting all of her earnings and getting charged with fraud because she was getting public assistance and not reporting her income. And when you're a celebrity, it's even harder to get away with stuff like that.
Yeah, I would use the celebrity loosely,
Yeah. That's
but
true.
I think you kind of hit the nail. Is the she wasn't like she was just on one public assistance. She was on CalWork, she was on CalFresh, she was on Medicaid. Like she was on
Hmm.
multiple different kinds in multiple different areas, and it got to a point where it I don't even think it was the fact they were looking into it. I think it was just because of how popular it is and how much she was using really is what sparked that. Because if you don't keep up with that kind of stuff, they're going to start looking into it. And when you're also taking avenues that are not necessarily, how's the word I want to word it, publicly accepted,
Hmm.
which we'll get to in a second, but you have these avenues and you're again blaming or justifying your behavior because you have all these kids that you chose to have. And I think that's part of where the pushback was. It'd be different if she was making money like here and there, like any way she could. I think there would have been some leeway, but it really was just the blatant disregard of, she basically said she didn't get anything else. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the push.
Yeah. I, I totally agree.
But yeah, it was nearly $30,000 that she didn't require, like that she got, that she said she never got, and that was from personal appearances, endorsement, media royalties, and she had benefits, I think, of almost 30,000. So it was pretty much equal, and that's, I think, also
Mm-hmm.
the thing is it's not like she made $1,000 and got 20. Like she pretty much broke even between the two,
Yeah.
and at that point, from an outside perspective, I'd be like, listen, hold on, if you made this much money and that's how much you got from us, why do you need it? Like, there's other people who probably need it that aren't getting it. So I could see why they zoned in.
Yeah. And I mean, she did ultimately plead no contest to a misdemeanor, and she had to pay back like $26,000 of the 30,000.
Yeah.
Um, which I do believe that she probably did need the money, but that doesn't mean that you can't report it, and it would affect your income and how much you're going to receive in benefits. And she's always been kind of weird about that in interviews, like sort of dodgy about how she really was just on disability and it wasn't welfare, and that it's overblown. But I don't think it really matters. She still was evading, defrauding, being sketchy.
Yeah, public assistance. And
Hmm.
I think what also was kind of funny in her judgment, she also got ordered for community service to be completed because she has so much of time to like let's just add one more thing that she needs to do in addition to taking care of 14 kids. So it's a it's a complicated one for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we definitely need to talk about other things that she was doing to make money. And I feel like that's one of the things she's most infamous for, is that she says that she was basically on the verge of homelessness, and in a act of desperation she agreed to do porn, and she was stripping. And she has said that it was exploitative and dehumanizing. She didn't want to do it, but it also enabled her to pay for some plastic surgery, some reconstructive surgery, because her body went through a lot in
Mm-hmm.
her pregnancy journey. So that, I think, really intensified the public scrutiny against her, and it kind of even changed the perception of her further, is that she's all of these stigmas of a single mother to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm going to be really hard on her during this episode because I just have such a hard time grasping the idea of like putting yourself voluntarily into that situation, knowing like she was an educated person. She had a bachelor's degree in child development. She wasn't naive to what it takes to properly tend to a child. So like I know I'm gonna be hard for her throughout this whole episode. My only defense for her is that the one thing I do feel bad is if you do look at pictures before and after, she does look like a completely different person. She had a full mommy makeover, as they call it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think any woman who goes through that, we see that consistently of there's the scrutiny of women in general with plastic surgery, regardless of your reason, is the, oh well, you're beautiful always, like no matter, everybody's beautiful. And those are all true, but like if someone wants to change their appearance to make themselves feel better, they have every right to do so. And I think particularly people in the spotlight get even more scrutiny of like, why are you doing this? And now adding someone who has so many kids and having the responsibilities of like, most women who are raising one child have the concern of like, I don't have time for me. So her doing something for her, I think, is also so important, because you can't take care of your kids if you don't take care of yourself. But
Yeah.
if you're not employed, probably shouldn't get any plus. It's poor choice of funds. But I will say, I think that is a consistent thing we see society kind of do, is just attack any kind of physical change.
Yes. Attacking sex workers, attacking single mothers, attacking poor people, attacking, like she fits all of these categories. And it's kind of like a perfect storm situation. Um, and she also had some, investigations, like child services was called on her a lot. And I think some of it unjustifiably, probably, but they did find some things. Like there were some points where she was living in a house with one working toilet with all of these kids in kind of gross conditions. And the kids were never taken into custody. They were never really found to be in danger, but there was some neglect going on, which I think it would almost be impossible not to have some neglect going on in this kind of a situation as a single mother to 14 kids. And it kind of led to a situation where these kids are in this situation where they're not famous, but they're in the spotlight. There's paparazzi, there's their mother doing weird stuff on social media, putting them in front of cameras. She's doing sex work, she's doing porn. That's all very well known. And through all of this, these kids are living in not great conditions and not getting that much attention. So it's it's just really not an ideal situation all around.
Oh, absolutely. And part of these investigations were not just standard neglect. There was conversations, there was sexual abuse conversations, where even her mental capacity and mental well-being was being brought into question, where there was an incident that she didn't know where some of her kids were when they were there. And you have external people, I think everyone from her neighbor to her own manager, having concerns. The babysitter who's coming in and helping, having concerns. So it's not just like it was one person. Because I think sometimes we see like the same person having a problem. These accusations of neglect and abuse were coming from multiple sources, which for me brings up a little bit of more validity to it. Of if one person says it, you could probably get out of it. But if you have 3 or 4 people saying the same thing, are they all liars?
Yeah, I don't think so.
But I think you also kind of like mentioned something that important is the sex work and the porns that she did and the nude photos. And this was something that was very contradictory to what she would say publicly and then her actions. So she would openly say that she doesn't want to do any of this, but then she would be volunteering for these things and seeking out things that kind of highlighted her body, and then commenting, well, I've been focusing on weight training and after my pregnancy and helping pain management. And the behaviors didn't always match depending on who was talking to her. And then she goes and tried to trademark the term Octomom. So again, if you're in this just to help like survive, why are you trying to trademark something the media named you? Like,
I mean, to be fair, we did say in the beginning that nobody knows her name and she's just
true.
Octomom.
Very true.
So really, how can anyone else use this name for anything? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's yeah. But something I find kind of interesting is like thinking about her and Kate Goslin, because I feel like that was sort of that was a sextuplet situation, 6 babies at once, but it had like a similar media frenzy. But she was able to turn that into a TV show very quickly and was even more in the spotlight and even more of a household name. And I feel like Nadia never really quite had that. She did recently have that Lifetime series, but she was never able to transition into just regular reality TV where we see so many of these giant families.
I do think she tried.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you talk to her managers, and when I say talk to, I mean listen to interviews on them, um, they all kind of were like, we did what we could. Like, there was the potential for that. And Nadia was, they describe her as like unmanageable,
Mm-hmm.
where she was not very compliant. She was very difficult to work with. And when you're in that world, your manager's your best friend. Like, that's the person who gets you everything. And when you're not responsive, when you're not agreeable, it makes things hard. And then when, again, your manager's having concerns about your mental being and your children who are the spotlight, like, how can you put that on TV? Hey, let's broadcast neglect. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't paint a picture if she can't fake it. You know what I mean? I don't want to say fake it, but you have families like the Duggars, for example, and that now that coming out of shiny happy people, and like what was on the screen wasn't necessarily the whole truth. And I don't think any reality show ever is. But if you can't even have the confidence that your client can fake it that much, how are you even going to put your name on the line for this potential opportunity?
Yeah, exactly. I do. She does seem to be very, very difficult to work with, and that there's always some sort of problem. And I think that she has kind of a complicated relationship with the truth in general, which also makes somebody pretty difficult to work
Right.
with. And I think that she just has a completely different vibe and image than the Duggars and the Goslins, and it just doesn't hit the palate the same way.
Mm-hmm. No, I
Yeah.
agree. And then there was a lot of controversy even when she started and pretty early on, which makes it harder to start those realities.
Mm-hmm.
For example, she did in 2012, she filed bankruptcy. And in 2014, she had that welfare fraud. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to put that being the start. Like, we look at Sister Wives, they end up having some financial issues, but that was seasons into the show. You
Mm-hmm.
have Shiny Happy People that came out after the fact, again, seasons after the original show. If you can't start with bankruptcy, porn, and welfare fraud.
Unfortunately, because that would actually make for a much better show,
That'd be
probably.
so good.
I mean, I think it would be great to watch. There would never be a dull moment going on because I mean, I feel like with the Goslins, like it was kind of controlled chaos, but I don't think that she even had a slight amount of control over the kids. So it was just constant chaos that we would have been watching and her navigating these very interesting decisions. Like I kind of wish she just got a reality show during her pregnancy and they never stopped filming her.
That would have been a better way to do it, yeah.
Just
But
constantly
again,
watch.
I think that brings us back to the complicity of it because even during her pregnancy, that's what sparked a lot of the ethical concerns about how she got pregnant to begin with.
Yes. And
Because there was that whole investigation on the doctor who ended up losing his medical license.
yes, and rightfully so, because even if you have a patient that's asking for this kind of treatment, you should know as a doctor that this is a crazy, ridiculous harm to transfer. And he has said that he was just desperate to help her have a family. She really wanted to have a large family, and this is all what she wanted. But this is someone who has had 6 successful live births.
Yeah.
You do not need to transfer this many embryos. To me, that reads more of she had that many left, and we just, we're going to be done after this cycle. So we're just going to chuck them all in and see what happens. But
Mm-hmm.
the odds of high order multiples were ridiculously high. And like the toll and the risk that put on her health and her life and all of the children. It is against incredible odds that they're all alive now, which they are. They're all
Right.
16 now,
Yeah.
and she's 50. I mean, she's survived this, but it was an incredibly dangerous position for this doctor to put her in. And she's said many times, and including in her new series, that she really regrets not suing him, because that could have been millions of dollars basically in malpractice, which
Yeah.
I don't disagree with. The
But I
NICU bills
also
alone.
wonder, because I agree it's $1 million thing if everything thus far that we know is true.
Mm-hmm.
Because knowing what we know of with Nadia's way she presents things, I would be very curious what his notes say about what their conversations were prior to implantation. Because I definitely agree. I think he was experimenting. I think he knowingly put more than he should have in. But I also wonder how involved she was in that kind of conversation of, let's just put them all in. I can't do this again. Like presenting the idea of, I can't do it again. This is my last chance. Blah blah blah. Clearly, she probably would have. Like, on what we know, I would be very curious if part of the reason she didn't is she knows that there's something in there that the doctor, like, she would go down to. I don't know why. I just feel like she would have if she could have.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe. Yeah, it's honestly kind of surprising to me, because we know that when she, in her previous life, prior to having all of these children, she was a psychiatric technician and got injured at work and sued and got her startup money for IVF through that. So it's not like she's the kind of person that wouldn't sue. She
Right.
certainly would. So, and I don't know how long you have to file in that kind of situation, but I I mean, I'm sure she probably did ask for whatever he ended up doing. Like, she says she asked for 6 embryos, he put in 12, maybe I, to me it doesn't make sense that he would put in even more than she'd asked for, but
Right.
either way, that's still on him
Oh,
ultimately.
100%. I don't think he's without blame, but I do think, like you mentioned, like, she would have, if she thinks that something wouldn't have come out about their conversations prior to, I think she would have, personally.
Mhm. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, it's so unbelievable to me that she even survived that pregnancy at all.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if she had not, then there would have been 6 children, possibly 14, that would have not had any parents at all, because there is no father. And Nadia was in this very serious mortal danger. So
Hmm.
again, it's just like wildly irresponsible medical practice. And it's amazing to me how healthy the 16-year-old octuplets seem to be.
Oh, yeah. And I think, just kind of looking at current, because a lot of this was in the mid 2000s, early 2000s that we were looking
Mhm.
at. And now the octuplets are 16. Her other children are adults.
Mhm.
And she became a grandmother recently, which I think
Mhm.
is complicated, because you look at individuals from a statistical perspective that grow up before they should tend to have these kids younger, or aren't taught sexual reproduction. They're not educated on certain things, tend to lead to teen pregnancies and or young person pregnancies. Like, very
Mhm.
rarely, kind of like we talked about, unless there is some kind of connection, are you having a baby in your late teens, early 20s. It's not typically planned.
Yeah, definitely. And if it is planned, it's planned because of uh, a lot of times, I think, because of growing up in a chaotic environment, or maybe not getting all the love that you needed, something like that.
Or religion.
Or religion. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, all kind of questions. And I know she's consistently always mentioned that she's working on a memoir about her resilience and her challenges. And I just, again, I kind of want her to finish it because I think it would be very interesting. But I think it could also open a can of worms because whatever she says, I think the people that she talks about are going to challenge. I think, like you mentioned, she has this complicated relationship with the truth. So when you start publishing a memoir, people have the right to challenge that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, would I read it? Yes.
Yeah.
Would I be so thrilled if that came out? Yes. But if I was in her family, if I was a work associate, if I knew her in any kind of capacity, I would be very scared about what she would write because I think that she's kind of reckless with what she says and what she does.
Oh, I agree. But
So I feel like we touched on a lot of the main things with Octomom. Do you have anything left that we wanted to talk about?
no, I think we talked about most of it. She's just one that I think was very chaotic, and there's a lot we don't know, and I think there's a lot we'll never know with her life. And I do think as her kids get older, we'll start learning more as her kids talk about things, because I do think there's going to be opportunities in the future for media to reach out to them, because again, 8 surviving octopods, like, crazy, and their mom will always be Octomom, and she will always come up at some point. And I think there, if her patterns show anything, she's gonna end up in media again, because 2025 she just put out a new, like, TV show, and this happened in, like we said, mid 2000s. So I think she's gonna keep popping up, and I hope the kids are more of a focus as we go and we kind of get their perspective on things. What about you? Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I would love if one of the kids would write a book. I think that would be really, really interesting to get one of their perspectives. I always kind of love, like, I mean, it's sad, but I kind of love hearing about kids who grew up in the spotlight because I just think it's such an interesting childhood experience, and it definitely would be a unique perspective. And also being just such a high order multiple in such a large family, I think it would be an interesting perspective. And yeah, I hope that she kind of keeps herself in the spotlight a little bit, and I'll always be checking in.
Well, time will tell.
All right, well, we'll pick up here next week.
Until next time.
All right, bye.